이건 저 영어 채널에서 댓글인데요. 오늘 이런 메시지를 누가 남겨놨어요. Very nice explanation. 매우 설명 잘했다. Very good and simple example of boiling eggs to explain such a complex concept. 이렇게 복잡한 개념을 설명하기 위해 달걀 삶기 예를 들어 매우 잘 설명했다 이런 뜻이에요. 그래서 제가 이 동영상을 이렇게 봤더니 제가 이거를 2020년 1월 21일 그러니까 1년 반 전에 이 동영상을 만들었어요. 제가 이 동영상을 보니까 제가 봐도 잘 만든 것 같아요. 이걸 제가 무슨 정신으로 만들었는지 모르겠어요. 이게 반응이 좋아서 제가 동영상을 다운받아서 제 동영상이니까 이렇게 다운받을 수 있거든요. 이거 영어로 찍은 건데 자막을 입혀갖고 제가 한글 채널에서 한번 올려볼게요. 볼만할 거예요. Hi everyone, my name is Thomas Kim. In this episode, I will explain Amdahl's law and Gustafson's law and pipeline programming pattern. Pipeline programming pattern plays very important role in modern programming. In case of Vulkan programming, we implement pipeline pattern. Input assembler is a task. Vertex shader is a task. Tessellation is also a task. Geometric shader is also a task. And rasterization, fragment shader, coloring, all these tasks are sequential. These tasks should be executed in serial mode. Also, pipelines and shader with direct 3D input assembly, vertex shader, hull shader, tessellation, domain shader, geometric shader, rasterizer, pixel shader, output merger. These are individual tasks that should be executed in sequential order or in serial order. In this episode, I will explain Amdahl's law, Gustafson's law, and the pipeline programming pattern. Suppose I want to make eggs into granules to feed my parrots. I will purchase 10 eggs and another basket of 10 eggs. Another basket, 10 eggs. Now I have a kettle. This is fire and I boil 10 eggs. I can boil 10 eggs in a batch. After boiling eggs, I use some special machine or instrument. This instrument can dry 10 eggs. I can dry 10 eggs at a time. Then using another machine with 10 eggs, I make 10 dried eggs into granules. To boil 10 eggs, it takes 5 minutes. To dry 10 eggs, it takes 3 minutes. To make 10 dried eggs into granules, it takes 2 minutes. Boiling process, drying process, granulization process, all these tasks should be executed in serial mode or in sequential. Now let me define two very important terms. The first is latency. Latency is defined to be the total time taken from input to output. So in this system, 5 minutes to boil eggs plus 3 minutes to dry boiled eggs plus 2 minutes to granularize 10 dried eggs. So the total time taken from input to output is 10 minutes. Another very important term is throughput. Throughput is defined to be the total workload over the total time taken. So in this case, the total workload is 10 eggs. The total time taken is 10 minutes. So 1 eggs per minute. Jean Amdahl, the computer architect, in 1967 observed that if we want to improve the latency of such a system, we have to improve the clock speed of our computing machine. For example, if we want to reduce the latency from 10 to 5, then our machine should run 2 times faster. So we have to make boiling process twice faster, drying process twice faster, granularization twice faster. Then we can improve latency 5/2 plus 3/2 plus 2/2 equals 5 minutes. If we improve only one part of our program, for example, boiling process, the new latency will be 5/2 plus 3/2, then it becomes 7.2. If we compare this number with 10, the gain is very disappointing. The problem is that the clock speed of modern computing machine is close to its limit. The simplest approach to our problem is cramming more CPU cores in our processor die. 1 core, 2 core, 3 core, 4 core in our processor die. The problem is power dissipation. Suppose 1 core dissipates 1 joule per second or 1 watt, then 1 watt, 1 watt, 1 watt. Now our processor die dissipates or consumes 4 times more energy. That means our processor die is 4 times hotter. Okay? Now our processor die is 4 times hotter. The problem is that the hotter the processor die, the more unstable our CPU cores. So if the processor die is hotter, then we have to reduce the clock speed. That means the performance of our CPU core degrades. My point is that we cannot cram CPU cores into processor die arbitrarily. We cannot because of power dissipation. In 1988, Gustafson published an article in which he re-evaluated Amdahl's law and suggested a system that looks like the above diagram. In this diagram, this is a small dedicated process. A small dedicated process. Small, 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 small dedicated process. In the boiling stage, we employ 5 small dedicated processors. In drying stage, we introduce 3 small dedicated processors. In the granulation process, we employ 2 small dedicated processors. Some people call these small dedicated processors stream processors. Others call it CUDA processors. In this configuration, 5 minutes for boiling, 3 minutes for drying, 2 minutes for granulation. The latency is still 10 minutes. Latency is the same, but the throughput is different. In case of boiling, the throughput is 50x over 5 minutes, so 10x per minute. In case of drying stage, the throughput is 30x over 3 minutes or 10x per minute. In case of granulation stage, the throughput is 20x over 2 minutes or 10x per minute. So in this configuration, the total throughput is 10x per minute. The latency is still 10 minutes, but the throughput is different. If we compare with our original problem, the throughput is 1 egg per minute, but in this system, 10 eggs per minute. Huge improvement. Also note that small dedicated processor for boiling stage does not need to be the same to the small dedicated processor for drying stage. Also, granulation small dedicated processor does not need to be the same to drying stage processors. These small dedicated processors or specialized processors are called shaders. So, boiling shader, boiling shader, boiling shader, boiling shader, boiling shader. This is drying shader, drying shader, drying shader, granulation shader, granulation shader. Shaders are small specialized dedicated processors in GPU. Now we understand what is shader. Shaders are small specialized dedicated processors in GPU. These processors are sometimes called stream processors or CUDA processors. Please note that I could be wrong. Also note that we use shading language to program tasks for shaders. These shader programs run in parallel. If we make shader program, this shader program runs in parallel. If we make a shader program for drying stage, this program runs in parallel. Don't forget that shader program runs in parallel. Please understand that I am an absolute beginner for modern GPU programming. So if I am wrong, please leave your comments and help me correct my wrong knowledge. In my next episode, I will talk more about pipeline programming pattern. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.